This is the Motor 100 by Codale, a portable electric coffee grinder. The design is a big part of what makes it stand out. Codale sent me this pre-release unit before the Kickstarter launch, and I've been using it for a while. In this video, I want to show you what it's like to use for everyday coffee, and some really cool and practical features. On the box, you already see a lot of product information. There are suggested grind settings for different brew methods. Since this is an early sample, the final retail packaging might look a bit different. Inside the box, there's a waterproof carrying bag. It protects the grinder and makes it easier to take with you. The grinder itself feels solid in the hand. We'll take a closer look in a bit. You also get a USB-C charging cable. The main body of the grinder is aluminum with a matte finish. The one I have here is black, but there's also a silver version if you prefer a lighter look. On the top, there's a single button to control the grinder, and on the back you have the USB-C port for charging. In the lid, there's a small LED light, and you can turn it off if you don't need it. The bean inlet is angled in a way that makes it easy to pour beans in smoothly, without spilling. The grinder uses a screw-on catch cup. The inner walls are smooth with no awkward corners, so the grounds come out easily when you pour. There's also a rubber ring on the bottom to add grip, so when you set it on a table, it stays stable and doesn't wobble much. The whole layout is very clean and simple. There aren't any extra parts getting in the way. My first impression is that the design feels refined, with good attention to detail, and nothing about it feels cheap. For grind adjustment, the grinder uses an external ring. You can change the grind size without taking anything apart. Each click is roughly 35 microns, and you get around 60 clicks to work with. There's a micron scale printed under the dial, so you have a rough idea of the grind range you're in. At the bottom of the burr, there's a small screw you can loosen with a coin. Once you take that out, the burr just lifts out. It's a 7-core, 39mm conical burr, and the shape reminds me a bit of the Espresso K-series burrs. This style of burr handles both espresso and pour-over well, and keeps grinding speed and efficiency high across different brew methods. It has a DLC coating, which helps protect against rust and also lowers friction while grinding. Inside the grinder, it's pretty much all metal. You hardly see any plastic, so it feels solid, and I'm not too worried about durability. Putting it back together is simple. Set the dial back to 0, drop the burr back in, and tighten the screw again. One thing to keep in mind, if you want it back at the factory calibration, after you tighten it, you turn the dial back about 180 degrees. If you skip that step, the grind will be a bit finer. My guess is Codale leaves this safety zone so the burrs don't touch each other and get damaged. The upside is that if you ever need a finer grind, you still have some room to go finer. And here is the Codale ion generator stand. In the box you get a dosing cup and a cable for power. The stand itself kind of looks like a small UFO. On the inner ring, on both sides, you can see the little pins that release ions and help with static. On the bottom, there's a LED light and a USB-C port. The dosing cup snaps on with magnets and sits very firmly on the stand. You can buy the stand by itself, or as a set with the grinder. It matches the grinder perfectly, and they look great as a set. Using the stand is pretty simple. Plug in the cable and connect it to the USB-C port. There's no extra power switch. Once it's plugged in, the light turns on, and if it sits still for a bit, it goes into standby. It uses vibration to detect movement, so when you move it, or when the grinder is running, it wakes up and starts doing its anti-static thing automatically. Now let's do a quick retention test. Here I use 18.1 grams of coffee beans. No RDT, just grind straight away and start the timer. The grind size is set to a fairly fine espresso range, because fine grinds usually create more static and more coffee spraying around. This makes it easier to see how well it handles retention and static. For espresso, the grinding time stays under 1 minute. At the end, the scale still shows 18.1 grams, so there's basically no loss. There is a little bit of coffee that sticks under the burr, but not much. When the ion generator is turned on, the 2 pins on the sides release charged ions into the grind chamber. That helps neutralize the static charge that builds up on the coffee grounds and on the walls, so the grounds are less likely to stick, clump, or fly everywhere. You can see it more clearly after grinding. With the ion generator off, more fine coffee tends to stick around the chute. With it on, there is still some static, but much less. If you brush the pins clean from time to time, the anti-static effect works even better. The stand itself is not something you absolutely need. Spraying a tiny bit of water on the beans before grinding, doing RDT, already reduces most of the static issues. But not everyone likes doing RDT, or wants water anywhere near the burrs over the long term. Since this stand looks good, and the price is not too wild, it's still worth thinking about if you like this kind of setup. The grinder uses a 100-watt brushless motor. For electric grinders, a BLDC motor is usually seen as a higher spec choice. It's not only about a longer lifespan, you also get more stable power, less heat buildup, and better performance at low speed with higher torque. While grinding, the noise level is well controlled. The sound is not very sharp, and among the portable grinders I've tested, this one is on the quieter side. If you're at home or in an office and you don't want to bother people around you, that's a nice bonus. For speed, I've tested a few different settings. For espresso grind, it finishes in under 1 minute. For a medium grind for pour over, it takes under 30 seconds, which is very fast for a portable grinder. Next, let's pull some espresso and see how it performs. Here I pair it with a portable espresso machine, the MHW3 Bomber Express 58. First, let's look at the grounds. The coffee comes out nice and fluffy. Since I'm using a bottomless portafilter, puck prep still matters a lot, so I try not to rush this step. A decent puck prep really helps reduce channeling and messy spraying. The Express 58 can heat water by itself, but at home it's simply easier to pour in hot water directly. For espresso, I start around grind setting 10, and dialing in is actually quite easy. After 1 or 2 small tweaks, the flow looks good, and the shot comes out at a nice pace. The crema looks great. The espresso is syrupy, and the color is rich. To be honest, the result doesn't feel weaker than what I get from many traditional grinders and espresso machines. It really makes me feel that portable gear has gotten pretty strong these days. The espresso tastes very balanced, with no strong astringency. The sweetness is clear, and the roasty bitterness stays under control, so it already tastes very good. Drinking it straight doesn't feel harsh. I also tested the grinder with a more traditional espresso machine. With both darker roasts and lighter roasts, the shots stay quite consistent as long as the recipe is dialed in properly. This is a stepped grinder, and each click is about 35 microns. You do get less micro adjustment than on a stepless grinder. But if this is good enough to pull decent espresso, especially when you are pairing it with a portable device. After espresso, let's look at its pour-over performance. For this test, I use a setting around 32 clicks with 15 grams of lightly roasted Ethiopian coffee. I've ground this bean on this grinder many times, and I haven't run into clogging issues, so it's been very consistent. Looking at the grounds, the particle distribution seems quite even. This is Codale's filter paper presser, made entirely of aluminum alloy. The shape looks a bit like a small crown. It has 20 ridges, and the angles work well with both flat bottom papers and cone-shaped papers like the V60. The most useful part is that these ridges help guide the paper neatly into the dripper, and after rinsing, the edges sit more snugly against the walls. It's not something you must have, but I enjoy using it, and I'm happy to keep it in my routine. The grind itself looks nice and even. During extraction, you can already smell a pleasant jasmine-like aroma. The flow rate is easy to control, and even toward the end, there's no obvious clogging. The whole brew drains in a little over 2 minutes and 20 seconds, which feels about right for this recipe. The aroma is strong, the body is there, and it doesn't taste too thin or tea-like. At the same time, the cup has good separation and layering, so it's a very enjoyable brew. I also did a side-by-side comparison with the Time More Whirly. Both portable grinders took almost the same time to grind 15 grams of coffee, and the grind from both looked pretty good. I brewed 2 cups with the same recipe. Tasting them next to each other, there were some clear differences. The Codale gave a brighter, more lively acidity, and I felt the layering was a bit more pronounced. The whirly was more rounded and smooth, with acidity, sweetness, and bitterness all slightly more restrained, and the body felt a bit lighter. Both cups were easy to drink. It mainly comes down to what kind of profile you like. Another very practical feature is the battery and power output. Inside there are 4 1250 mAh cells, so it basically works like a small power bank. Portable espresso machines with heating use a lot of power, so in an emergency, you can hook them up to this grinder with a USB-C cable and give them a bit of extra power. Tested with this device, the output sits around 9V 2A, so roughly 18 watt. The charging speed is actually pretty decent. It can also charge my iPhone, and the speed is fine as a backup. That's not really the main purpose of the grinder, but it's a nice bonus. I also tried using the grinder to power the ion stand directly. When the grinder is idle, it can power the stand, but while it's grinding, it can't output power, so the ion stand won't run at the same time. That means the stand still needs its own external power source. For battery life on the grinder itself, I've been testing all sorts of things for almost a week before the battery indicator turned red. It supports fast charging, and it recharges pretty quickly. One last thing I want to talk about is the LED light. I tried pulling espresso in a completely dark room. One thing to note is that you can't open the lid and turn the light on while grinding, because opening it stops the grinder. So I had to grind in the dark, then turn the light on afterwards. The brightness is enough to light up the whole work area, and it's clear enough for puck prep and other steps. At first, it feels like a little gimmick, but at night, when camping, or when you're outdoors with weak lighting, it's actually pretty useful. The grinder is also rated IP65 for dust and water resistance, so it clearly has outdoor use in mind. Overall, I've really enjoyed using this grinder. For build, design, and grind quality, I'd say it's above average for a portable setup. Pair it with different portable espresso makers, and it makes brewing outside very easy. And even at home, it can handle different brew methods just fine. The final retail version might change a bit, so if you're interested, you can check more details on the Kickstarter page. I've leave a link in the description. Hope this walkthrough gives you a clear picture of what the Codale Motor 100 can do. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thanks for watching.